Hi and welcome to another episode of PeaceMegTV. In today's video for Lightroom, we're going to be taking a look at the knit collection and specifically focusing on creating black and white images through using the Silver Efex Pro 2 plugin. So let's take a look at how we can use that and how we can create eye-catching, stunning black and white images quickly and easily with this versatile plugin. So I've got an image open in front of me and I'm in the develop module in Lightroom and we're ready to start working with this image. So to invoke the Silver Efex Pro 2 plugin, all we need to do is come over the image, right click, come down to choose edit in, and as you can see we've got a whole range of different options we've got available to us. So I'm going to come down to Silver Efex Pro 2. That's going to give me the option to either edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, edit a copy, or we can edit the original. So if I've made any changes to the file to start off with through Lightroom, I can edit that edited version inside Silver Efex Pro 2, or I can choose to edit a copy. So that'll just take a copy of the original unedited file, or I can edit the actual original file itself. So for this example, I've done no editing inside Lightroom. It's still all set to the default values. So I'm just going to say to edit a copy. So we'll hit edit. That'll open up the interface, load in the picture, and as you can see now we've got the Silver Efex Pro 2 interface to start working with. So let's expand that out a little bit. So let's just take a brief overview of what we've got available and how it's all broken down, and then we'll take a look at editing this image and going through some of the different facilities and tools that you have available to you in this plugin. So if we look down the left hand side, you can see we've got a preset library available to us, and we can scroll through and you can use any of these to quickly choose and edit. You may find something that you think, actually that's exactly what I'm looking for, at which point you can just OK out of this, save it, or you can come through and use these as the basis for your edits, or you can completely ignore them and you can come over and start working on the right hand side where you can start to control and edit every single aspect of this black and white image. But you'll see that we've got a whole range of different presets available. We can even create and save our own if we want to. They're also categorized into various different sections, so you can see at the moment we're looking at all of them. If we only wanted to look at modern effects, we can click on that and that'll filter that down to the 11 that are available. Classic, we've got 15. If we use this several times, we'd have a recently used section, and we can even add ones to the favorites if we want to store certain different presets that we like to use on a regular basis and we don't want to scroll through the entire list of them every single time we load this up. If we scroll down, you can see we've also got some additional options. We've got custom, imported, and history. So if I just click on custom to expand that panel out, you'll see at the moment it's empty. But what we can do is we can save these out. So let's just say, for example, I'd made some edit to this image. Let's just make some changes. And we wanted to use this as the basis for all our future images, for example. Then I could just come up to the top right hand corner, click on the plus, give this preset a name, and we'll just call this one sample, and click OK. And there's our preset created based upon what we've done to this image. So that's our starting point. So that's how easy it is to create custom presets. We also have a couple of options available to us with the preset itself. If we might take the mouse over, you see we get 3 different icons. We can click to delete the preset with the X in the top left hand corner. We can export the preset, so we could give that to someone else if you wanted to, make it available on our website, you know, whatever kind of thing you want to do with that. Or if we'd made changes to this image and we wanted to update the preset with the changes we've made, we can simply come down to the bottom right hand corner, and then whatever changes we'd made to that initial saved out custom preset would be saved and updated, so we'd have a new version of it. As you can see, we have an option at the bottom that says export all. So we had multiple different custom presets in there. We could simply export all of those in one simple button click. Quick and easy. So next in the left hand menu, you can see we've got imported. So if I click to expand that, you can see again at the moment there's nothing in here because I don't have anything imported into my library. But what I can do is I can simply click on the plus. That'll open up the dialog box that allows me to choose where I've saved my presets, and then I can simply look for any files that have the .np extension, select those, click open, and then they will be added in to my imported presets library. And finally, you can see we've got history, which will show us all the different things that we've done to this particular image right the way through. So we can step back to any point in the same way you can kind of do with Lightroom itself. The only downside with this is that all this is only available to you with the image that you're currently working on. This doesn't export with the file itself. So if we come back in and edited that edited image back into Silver Efex Pro, then it wouldn't be there available to us. It's only in the session we're working on. So it's not quite as flexible as Lightroom, but it's still a great little feature we've got added in there. You can see down the bottom left hand corner now we've got help. And if we click on that, that'll take us through to the Nik Software help section online. So let's just close that down. And we've also got settings. So if you click on that, you can see we've got a range of different settings that we can use to customize the way that the Silver Efex Pro 2 library works. You can see we can specify the language, default preview mode, and so on. We can control the GPU if that's going to be used for your processing. Your output settings, so you can specify if there's any compression applied to the file. If you use a JPEG, what compression is going to be applied, etc. And you've got the Improve the Nik collection, which allows you to send anonymous usage through to Google, which obviously is entirely up to you. So we'll cancel that. We've then got the main window, which is the preview of what we're currently working on. And if we take a look at the top, you can see you've got a couple of icons on the left-hand side and a couple of icons on a menu on the right-hand side. So what this will allow us to do is the first one will show or hide this left-hand panel, so we can click and hide that. If we've got a picture that we want to make the most of our real estate on screen, we can simply click on that to close and open it back up whenever we want to. We've then got three preview options. We've got just showing the image itself, so they'll show that just the source image. We can then split that into a 50-50 view, which we can then come to the center and we can drag that over to see any of the effect that we've got on there. We can flip that to the opposite way and do exactly the same thing there. And we can click again to flip it back to the original. Or we can do a side-by-side preview, so we can see the original image and then we can see the edits that we're doing. And again, we can flip that over between the different views and so on. And finally, we've got the option to compare. So you can click and hold that down and you can see your before and after. Now, while we've got this compare option available to us and we've got the history state open on the left hand side, you'll see this little yellow symbol we have available to us. And what that's going to do is that'll be the starting point for the comparison. So in other words, this is where we are now. If we click and hold the compare down, if we look at this, you can see the initial state, which is set to neutral. So that's just a black and white image that's taken when you take it into Silver Efex Pro 2 with no alterations made to it. So we can just step this down through so we can say, well, what did it look like with the full spectrum inverse preset? And then we can just check and compare the two. What did it look like? And you can see we can compare. We can jump the history state around if we want to. So ignoring the compare option, we can drag this down and we can see where we were at any point. Let's select any of these to jump back through. So it's quite a versatile system on the left hand side, quite a good way of allowing us to specify exactly how we want to preview the changes we're making and the ability to hide and close or open back up this entire left hand section. So moving on to the top right hand side of this particular window, you can see we've got the option to set the zoom value, and if we click, you can see we've got the option from 6.25% up to 400%, so we can zoom right in. We can then just move that around in the preview window just by dragging this rectangle around, and we can come down and we can set any value we want in this from all those available. So depending upon the size of your image itself will depend upon how good you'll see the detail when you zoom in and out. And like I say, the navigator does make life a little easier. We've then got the option to change the background color. So at the moment we work with a 50% gray, but you may like to work with black, or you may prefer to work with white, or back to the 50% grey. So you can see you have a couple of options available to you there, which you can quickly switch through to find the one that actually suits you the best. And then the same as on the left hand side, you can see we can hide or open up the adjustment panel on the right hand side, which is where we're going to start going through all the different things we can do with this particular image. So let's put it back to its initial state. So we've got the starting image. We'll close that down for now. We don't want to do any presets. And let's start taking a look at all the tools we have available to us on the right hand side. Now at first look, the right hand panel may look like there's not a lot of options available to you in there. But the reality is there's a lot of fine detail options in there that you may not see straight away. You can see we've got the brightness, contrast and structure, and we can apply those globally to the overall image. So we can increase the brightness, adjust the contrast, adjust the structure, which applies a sort of sharpening effect by increasing the contrast between the contrasting areas, but that's applying it globally. So let's just reset those values back. Let's just say we wanted to get down and do a lot more fine-tuned controlling to this. Well, we can expand those out with a toggle arrow on the left-hand side of the name of each of the options. And as you can see now, we have more options available to us to fine-tune both the contrast, the brightness, the structure. You can see we can really get in there to a granular level and really make some fine-tuned adjustments. So we may think that, okay, the highlights need to have a little bit of brightness added to them, but we don't want those adjustments to affect the midtones or the shadows. So we may say, well, for the midtones, we want to drop those down, and for the shadows, we'll increase those or decrease them, whatever you kind of want to do with it. But now we're doing this on a tonal basis and not a global basis. So the adjustments we're making are only affecting either the highlights, the midtones, or the shadows, and we can affect those independently to give us a lot more control of exactly how the brightness is applied to the image. We've also then got the dynamic brightness option. So what exactly does the dynamic brightness offer us? Well, it effectively works by analyzing the image and adapting the brightness applied to each area differently. So when you normally adjust the brightness overall in your image, the result is the areas are darkened uniformly. So in other words, everything is darkened down, including the highlights. And that's not always what you want to do. So with a dynamic brightness, it retains the highlights while just bringing down the darker areas. So it's one of those things that's a very, very useful and powerful tool once you kind of get used to using it. And it allows you to get a lot more control, again, over how you adjust your brightness or your contrast. Let's start off by resetting the individual sliders. Put those back to their default points. Let's start then by adjusting the dynamic brightness to give this a little bit more punch. And then we can come through and fine tune with the individual highlight, midtone and shadow sliders, just to bring some of that depth back in there. Allow me to adjust the highlights. So you can see it already gives it a little bit more punch. There's a little bit more definition in there. That's just by adjusting a couple of different sliders. So what we can do, you can see we've got these global adjustments which we're working on at the moment, and we've got a checkbox in there. And this works in very much the same way as the toggle switches in Lightroom. Any effects that we change in any of these different control panels, we can simply hit the arrow to enable and disable those entire effects to see what they're doing to the overall image. So that's the brightness panel. So let's just shrink that back up. Let's come down to the contrast option, and you can see we've got three options available in there. We've got soft contrast, amplify blacks, and amplify whites. So as their name suggests, if we increase the amplify whites, then we're going to punch up the contrast in the white areas, in the highlights. And the same goes with the blacks. As you can see, we bring a lot more intensity with those blacks in there. So again, I switch that on and off. So there's already quite a considerable difference. There's a lot more hard-edged sort of black and white image just with those couple of simple alterations. And the soft contrast is one of those tools that you need to experiment with your image to see how it influences it. You can see if we take it over to the left-hand side, we start to lighten tonally the image, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And if you take it to the opposite way, you can see we start to darken down the darker areas in the image until you get a sort of soft glow effect with a really hard black contrast in there. So like I say, it's one of those things that try it, adjust it. You may find that it works really well and does exactly what you want. In this image, I kind of like it where we just overall lighten the image ever so slightly. Now on to structure. So the structure settings are very much like the clarity slider in Lightroom. They're very good at increasing the tonal contrast between contrasting edges. In other words, it gives a kind of sharpening effect. But the beauty of this is that you can control which parts of your image are sharpened through the highlights, midtones and shadows, and also the fine structure option. So you can see if we wanted to sharpen the midtones, we can simply increase that over, and that won't bring a lot of sharpened area into the darker areas. And we can do the opposite on there. So we could say that we wanted to sort of soften out any shadow areas, And then again, you can see, look at the difference on there. So we go from where we were to around 50% on the midtones. You can see the contrast and the sharpness in the overall face, and the mustache and the sort of the goatee has really started to pop out. We sort of get a pseudo HDR kind of black and white effect there. You know, you kind of have to be a bit careful with this, but you know, you can really get creative with it and get some really great looking effects. Whereas the fine structure applies it to the fine edge details in your image. So if we take that and start pushing it up, you'll start to see all the details in his hair, his moustache, the wrinkles in his skin and everything else, and also brings out the noise in the background in this example. So you can see it kind of goes a little crazy. So if you want to get that really hard defined sort of effect that you see in a lot of portraits, especially where you've got older people with very, very, should we say, characterful wrinkled skin, then this fine structure and the structure controls really are going to give you that easy way of getting that intense depth and detail and contrast and sharpness to those types of images. But you can obviously use it sparingly as well, just because you want to sort of bring that little extra bit of detail in there, but you don't want to go crazy and make people look hyper detailed. So that's the structure control. So the tonality protection is akin to the highlights and shadows option in Lightroom. What it does is, if you start to control the brightness and the contrast and the structure, you may find you start to blow out the highlights, or you get the shadows, you start to lose detail in there. Well, you can use this to recover that detail. Now obviously you can only recover the detail that was in the original source image. You can't get things back that didn't exist. So like I say, if you find that, for example, in his hair, we might find that the light is now starting to get a bit harsh in there, then I can start to control that by protecting my highlights and bring some of that back. And the same goes for the shadows. If they start to get a little too dark, you can open those back out by using the tonality protection for shadows. So we've got a way of making sure that any of these edits, we can still make them, we can push them a little harder than we might do, because we can recover certain details through the shadows and the highlights in the tonality protection section. Now with Silver Efex Pro 2 and pretty much all of the Nik collection, we're not limited to making global adjustments to the entire image. There may be times where you only want to affect certain parts of an image, but you'll notice there's a complete lack of using a brush tool or anything like that, like the adjustment brush in Lightroom. But what we do have are the selective adjustments option, and we can work with the intuitive control points control. Now, I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail on this, because the control points option is across the board through most of the different applications in the Nik collection. And what I'll do is I'll do a complete detailed video on how we can use that, what it does and what it gives you. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview in this video and just sort of show you some of the things you can do with it and roughly how it works. So what it does is we can click to add a control point. You'll see the mouse pointer now changes to this sort of target tool, and we can click anywhere we want. So let's just say, for example, I want to target this top left hand corner, which is just a little bit too light now, so starting to get some noise and grain in there. So what I can do is I can click on there, and we now get this control points panel. And as you can see, we've got BR, CO and ST, which is brightness, contrast and structure. And we've also got this radius selector at the top, which allows us to control how wide or how small the radius of effect that this particular adjustment through the control points adjuster is going to have. So if I start controlling the brightness, I can start bringing that back down. You can see now we start to darken that portion down without affecting the rest of the image. It feathers the edges so we don't get some crazy looking circle effects on there. So we can adjust the structure, the contrast and everything in there. So we can compensate for anything we do on this, or we can enhance anything we choose on there through using this control section. And we can click to expand that down. As you can see, we've got a lot more options available to us underneath. But like I say, we're not going to worry too much about that. But we wanted to sort of control things on there. We can amplify the whites, we can amplify the blacks, we can detail with fine structure, or we can come down and do selective colorization. But we'll take a look at that, like I say, in more detail in future videos. But just to know that this is a great tool, and it's one of the things that really does help set the Nik collection away from a lot of the other plugins, commercial and free, that are available for you. So we've also got the option to control the control points section. To start off with, we can turn this particular one on and off. So you can see we can just click and that'll enable and disable the effect in the top left hand corner. If we'd like to see exactly what's being affected, what we can do is we can check this box next to, in this example, control point 1, and that'll switch it over and show us the area that's being affected. So if we were moving this around or we were increasing this, we can see the effect that this is having on the image, so we can make sure it's only affecting the areas that we want, and then we can just disable that by checking it. The first checkbox will turn the effect on and off, so that's quick and easy. So when we have multiple control points, we can use this to turn individual ones off and select exactly which one's going to be enabled or disabled at any particular time. And finally, on this strip, we've got the option to show and hide the selection for all control points. So whereas this checkbox will show and hide for the selected control point, this would do it globally. So if we added extra control points in there, we could switch between all of them. And the same goes with this switch. We can switch on and off all of the control points, or we can do it on an individual control point by control point basis by just checking the relevant control point we want to work with. So before we move on, let's create another control point. And we'll just pop this up in the corner there, and we'll check the size of that. Yep, that's fine. And we'll just make some adjustments on there. Just not really bothered too much about what we're going to do. We're just going to adjust some things. So you now see we've got 2 control points available to us. And as I said, we can switch that on and off globally, or we can do it on an individual basis. And the same goes for switching all the control points on and off, or individual control points on and off. You can tell which is the currently active control point because it's the one that's highlighted in yellow. So you can see by selecting any of these allows us to quickly switch to any of the control points we've got available in our image. Alternatively, we can just simply click on the control point circle itself, but this sometimes makes it a little bit easier because you can just quickly run through when you've got a lot of control points on there and switch between the ones that you want very, very quickly and intuitively. So now while we have a couple of control points in our image, what we can do is we can hold the Shift key down on the keyboard and we can select all of the control points. So we can just click on the first one, hold the Shift key down, click on the second, or click on the last, and that'll select all of them. Now what we can do is we can group those together. So they now become a tied group. So you can see if we've got a lot of control points on there, it's going to make our lives a lot easier to have them grouped together in certain parts of the image, just to make identifying them a little bit easier. And it's just as easy to ungroup them. So what we can do is we can select the group we want and then choose this to ungroup the control points, and they now become individual control points again. Now, if I've done some editing to part of an image and I want to replicate that without having to go through the laborious process of setting all of these different control points to exactly the same value, what I can do is I can select a control point and then I can just click to duplicate it. We now get a second copy that's identical to the first. All of the settings are the same, so we can then just simply grab that, position it somewhere else in our image, and all of those effects will take place based upon the first one that we chose. And alternatively, we can just delete that if we want. Where we've got a control point selected, I can simply hit the trash can and that will delete it for us. So that's the basic overview of control points. And like I say, we'll take a look at those in a lot more detail in the video of their own in the future. Next up on the list, we've got color filters. So if you do black and white photography, you'll know that different colored filters will have different effects on the colors within your image. So you can see that you've got a range of different filters available to us. We've got a red filter, we've got an orange filter, yellow, green and blue, or we can set it to neutral. So you can see that if we click on that, each one will enhance different colors in the image. So if you're doing a landscape, red is great for the sky. It'll really make the sky punch up. You know, you can use these as the basis, and then you can fine tune them with a different hue and strength inside there, so you can adjust and tweak the effect of the filter on the colors that they affect inside the image itself. So again, you've got a lot more control than you'd have with a real filter on a camera. And just again, another one of those things that makes the Silver Efex Pro 2 such a flexible and powerful tool when you're working with black and white images, to really enhance and tweak them to get exactly what it is you're looking for, or to experiment and find some fun effects. We then got film types. Now what the film types does is Different types of black and white film have different characteristics, different kinds of grain, the way that they deal with colors and so on. And what this does is it'll emulate those different kinds of very popular films. So you may find you've got the Kodak Plus X 125px Pro. So that's the kind of going to give it more grain, a much punchier black and white image. Ilford, Kodak, different ones are available in there. So if you liked a particular type of film, if you come from a traditional camera background, then you may well find that there's an option in here that's going to give you a very close representation of what that specific type of film did to your images. Again, experiment, see if there's something you like in there. We can also come in and control the grain, the sensitivity of each of the colors in your image, and the levels and curves. So if you want to apply a curves adjustment to your image, you can do that inside this as well. So you've got, again, a lot of control over what you want to do with that, a lot of control over how the grain will appear. You know, really does come down to a huge amount of control over, again, exactly what it is that you're looking for in your images. Then finally, we've got the finishing adjustment. So if we expand that one out, you can see we have a couple of different options available to us there. We've got the ability to apply toning. So if you want to do a split toner, or sort of you want to put split toners on there, or selenium, or blue tone, or a cyanotype. You know, there's lots of different options which you can then fine tune and adjust. So we can choose the blue toner, and we can choose that one. We can expand that out, and you can see we can now come in and adjust the different options on there. We can adjust the strength of that blue. We can also adjust the hue, the balance, the paper hue. So again, you can really come in and fine tune. So if you like your images to have that slight toned color to them, a slight blue tinge or a sepia effect or something, you know, those are available to you in here. Or alternatively, you can just ignore that, leave it on neutral, and leave it as it is. We've then got the option to apply a vignette. And as you can see, we've got quite a few different options available to us. We've got fall-offs, we've got different frame effects. So you can get and choose in any of the options on there, or you can just ignore that again and adjust your own. So you can easily adjust that, what kind of vignette you want to apply, whether it's a circle or a rectangle, the size of it. You can place the center in your image, so you can specify exactly where the center point is going to be. So you can get, again, you can get very creative with the whole vignette option in this. We can burn the edges of the image if you want to. So you can apply some quite funky effects. So we can say, well, yeah, we want to burn all edges, or we want to burn certain edges. Whole range of different options. We can choose which edge you want to adjust, the strength, the size, and the transitions between those. And finally, we've got the option for image borders. So if we want to put a bit of border effect around there, we can do that quite easily. And as you can see, it comes with 14 different effects, of which you can then control various different aspects of it. So we can say we actually want to increase or decrease the size of the black border on this. That's easily achieved. The spread depends upon what effect you choose on there, to be honest. And then the clean and rough. So if we go for one of the sort of rough edges, you can see we can adjust the spread on there. And that'll adjust the size of the edge and how clean or how rough those edges actually are. So you can get creative with that if you want to. Or you can hit vary the border, and that'll randomly generate a different kind of border each time. So you can see all different options available in there. And at the very bottom, we've got the loop and histogram option to allow us to sort of pull that up. So you can see we can go through and we can use the zebra effects to find any areas in particular tones that are available. And once we've finished, we can hit the save button. So once we're happy with that, we hit save. That'll take that back out into Lightroom. And there we go. There's our copy of our image, all edited. And then if we want to make any more additional adjustments, we can now start using the Lightroom effects and the Lightroom controls on the right hand side to make any final adjustments to the overall image that we want. So that's Silver Efex Pro 2 from Nik Software. I hope you found this video useful. I hope it has given you a good insight, a good primer on how you can use this powerful and now free tool to create amazing black and white images where you've got huge amounts of control over almost every aspect of the image, at which you can then save those as presets and call them back up at any point in the future. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel to be kept up to date with all of the new content we add every single week. If you've got any comments or questions on this video, please pop those in the comment section below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And until next time, take care. If you do enjoy the tutorials we put out on this channel, please consider popping over to Amazon where you can purchase the new ebook we released on the Kindle store. 8 essential Adobe Lightroom techniques, where we go into detail about different techniques that every Adobe Lightroom user should really have in their arsenal. The link is in the description below and your support is much appreciated. Well, until next time, take care.